Everything You Ponder, Neville Goddard, April 19, 1969. If the Lord declares that David always does His will, and you, through a simple marginal act like giving the outer world a response, are not the Lord. When you imagine something, it's like striking a chord, and everything in harmony with that chord responds to manifest activity within you. If the world is the chord responding to something you're imagining, and David is a man after your own heart who will fulfill all your will, David isn't an external world. This isn't will as the world uses the term. You don't merely wish something to be so, instead, you imagine and become intimately convinced that it is so. And if, through your persistence, the world responds, you haven't only found David but also discovered the Lord as your marvelous human imagination. When you know what you want, assume you have it, believe your assumption is true, look at your world mentally, see your desire fulfilled. By doing this, you'll be eliciting a response to your thoughts. Let's delve into all of this in this video, so watch until the end. Before we continue, please like the video to help fortify it, and subscribe to the channel here. Assist our channel in growing and continuing to bring light to the lives of many people, just like yours. Gratitude to all. In Hebrew thought, history encompasses all generations of humans and their experiences fused into one great whole. This concentrated time in which all generations merge and from which they spring forth is termed eternity. In Ecclesiastes, we are informed that God has placed eternity into the mind of man. But so that man couldn't discover what God has done from the beginning to the end, only at the end will you truly comprehend what God has placed in your mind. The Hebrew word translated as eternity or world in Ecclesiastes is often rendered as a young man, a lad, a youth. These are three titles given to David, the son of Jesse, and the word Jesse, any form of the verb to be. Is this not the name of God? When the time of your departure arrives, you'll perceive the world of humanity not as a crowd of people but as a young man, a lad, for eternity is personified as a young man named David. You'll acknowledge this is true only when you reach the end. Now, heed these words found in John 20. Peter went to the sepulchre, where he saw the linen cloths and the napkin that was on his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped in a separate place. You might wonder why it's phrased like this, but I assure you, the linen clothes and the napkin carry great significance. Scrutinize the story carefully, and you'll discern that the tomb where he was crucified and buried was called the skull, and when Peter entered the tomb, he saw the linen cloths and the napkin but couldn't perceive the one who was there. This isn't a mundane tale of a man who died wearing linen clothes with a napkin covering his face and emerged from the tomb 3 days later, leaving his clothes and napkin behind. No, the scripture is a vision rich in symbolism. The linen clothes symbolize his physical body, the garment you wear here that conceals your true identity. This isn't the narrative of someone who perished but of someone who rose from the dead. In ancient times, the term napkin held a much broader meaning than we have today. We have a dinner napkin, a cocktail napkin, and also a sanitary napkin. But this napkin symbolizes the placenta. The placenta, symbolized by the napkin, appears separate from the body, indicating that a birth has taken place. This birth, emphasized by John as essential for entry into the kingdom of heaven, unfolds in a unique way. While Matthew and Luke narrate the story of a woman named Mary giving birth to a child born in a conventional manner, John, the most profound of the New Testament writers, reveals the true location of this birth. Mary, in this context, represents the skull, the womb through which God entered. As Blake expressed, God himself entered through the door of death with those who entered, and he lay in the grave with them in visions of eternity until they awoke and saw Jesus in the linen clothes that the woman had been. In this perspective, my mother, represented by the carnal garment I wear, descended into the skull, and upon her departure, the placenta followed, necessitating its discharge as it is not part of the earthly realm. Similarly, the napkin signifies that the extraordinary birth occurred within the skull. Undoubtedly, millions attended last Sunday's services, hearing about the resurrection. Indeed, he had risen. In a parallel manner, you have risen, as God assumed your human experience to enable you to recognize yourself as He is. Having entered your skull, God now envisions eternity, including visions of wars, famines, and convulsions, all of which were first imagined before becoming reality. When you conceive a state, the response comes from the external. Understanding who God is arises from the realization that He creates all things according to His desires. However, God requires individuals who will execute His will. If 500 diverse beings are needed to respond to your marginal act, they will appear as the influence through which your desire becomes manifest. Observe humanity, and you'll witness David consistently doing His will. Eventually, when your time is fulfilled, all of humanity converges into a single young man personified as David, emerging from within you and revealing himself as your father. Through personal experience, you will declare, "I have found David." He will proclaim, "You are my father," signifying the culmination of your journey. All generations of men and their experiences contribute to reaching the point of confronting the beauty of these fused experiences in the form of a single young man named David. Every individual born of a woman will eventually realize their identity as the God who created the universe and desired everything into existence. Forgiveness will follow, understanding that all were merely fulfilling His will. In the ultimate revelation, all will appear as David, and the acknowledgement will be, "I have found my son David, a man after my own heart, who does all my will." Transitioning to the words, "I, Jesus, am the root and the offspring of David," a day will come when you recognize that you created, entered, and animated humanity to respond to your marginal acts. After experiencing all generations and their diverse encounters, you will emerge from humanity knowing that you are both its offspring and its root, hence, your own father. Although you originated from the Father as promised, the prophecy unfolds, "When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your son after you, who will be of your body. I will be his father, and he will be my son." This symbolic planting of the seed in humanity, necessitating a descent before resurrection, echoes the timeless truth that a seed must fall into the ground and die to produce new life. God underwent death to become humanity, crafted from the dust of the earth, and identified as I Am. This divine seed, labeled as I Am, descended to earth, manifested as man, every individual, whether male or female, echoing the assertion, "I Am." The world responds to this imaginative state of I Am, irrespective of the nature of the response, whether favorable, adverse, or neutral. The responsive force, embodying the will of I Am, is personified as David, transcending individual names, races, or conditions. Each instance of response is an expression of David, consistently fulfilling the will of I Am. When you, regardless of your current identity, evoke a response, you embody David, bringing to visibility the envisioned state of I Am. By scrutinizing the cause of this response, you uncover it within yourself. This self-discovery marks the revelation of the Father and the Son, concluding your journey. Liberation from secondary causes in the realm of mortality converges your journey into a singular youth named David. In alignment with the narrative in the book of Samuel, you will perceive David as described therein, recognizing the eternity that God buried in your consciousness. Your journey has involved creating bodies for the theatrical stage, immersing yourself in them, and portraying diverse roles. Your enduring engagement with these words signifies the conclusion of the play, where you've enacted roles spanning the known and unknown, the affluent and the destitute, the unfortunate and the proud. You've embodied every conceivable part, converting them into a tangible reality within yourself. Activation is not obligatory, you possess the ability to enter a state and, through the simple act of assumption, bring that state to life, impervious to external hindrance. Whether a few or countless individuals are required to respond to your assumption, humanity, epitomized by David, will align with the will of I Am. All elements essential to fulfill your assumption will inevitably converge to witness the internal unfoldings you entertain. Considering Nicodemus's inquiry, grounded in Hebrew thought and perplexed by the concept of rebirth, the response emphasizes the necessity of being born from above to enter the kingdom. The drama unfolds as a cosmic being expands, initially creating humanity and then restricting itself to its creation, humanity. Although an integral component of the universe's structure, humanity exists in a state of death. God breathes life into the inert body, with the spirit entering to animate it. God, immersed in the body's lifeless state, embarks on the profound journey, dreaming of your experiences until awakening where the dream commenced, in your tomb, symbolized by your skull. Upon God's awakening, you too emerge, glancing back at the vessel occupied for 6,000 years. The linen clothes represent the descent of your mother into your womb, while the discarded body signifies the exhalation of the body. Witnesses to your birth perceive only the abandoned body, and the entity embodying the birth from above, having undergone the experience, reveals that the drama originated and culminated in the skull. The essence of the drama is intrinsically tied to God, the ultimate creator. Everything is God playing every role in the cosmic drama. Ultimately, God disentangles himself, rising from his own dormant state. This is resurrection. If you perceive Jesus Christ merely as a finite being, you miss the profound truth. Jesus Christ is the extraordinary faculty of your human imagination, synonymous with God himself. Your imaginative states are God's imaginings, and, akin to a sound provoking a response, your reality mirrors the roles required to bring fulfillment. Your task is to remain faithful to the state you've assumed. Paul articulates, "Remember Jesus Christ, descended from David, according to my gospel." Labeling it my gospel, he doesn't dispute Christ's lineage but acknowledges that David was a creation of God, with God immersing himself in David. God undergoes a self-forgetfulness, symbolized by death, and David emerges when memory is restored. Extricating himself from that physical form, God discovers heightened brilliance post-entry, increased translucency, augmented power, and wisdom because God embodies truth, an ever-expanding illumination. Expansion and luminosity have no bounds, only contraction and opacity have limitations. Resurrection involves emerging from the death-bound body enclosing you, and expansion is your reward for willingly entering and triumphing over this world of death. Therefore, don't seek a physical napkin, it symbolizes your spiritual birth. When the visionary experience unfolds, the significance of John's emphasis on the napkin becomes clear. John underscores the birth from above because only this kind of birth unveils paternity. The placenta is associated with the body, but upon the offspring's exit, it is discarded. This visible sign of birth remains invisible to mortal eyes. It's a spiritual birth. People will witness the remnants you wore, but they won't truly see. A day will come when you'll live the symbolic messages within the scriptures. At that moment, you and I will reoccupy the bodies we inhabited before our descent, these mortal bodies. The resurrected body isn't a completed entity but an ongoing erection, comprising the redeemed. Each individual must lead to this experience, transforming the body into something more glorious, brighter, and marvelously enhanced than before our descent into self-created mortality. You committed no wrongdoing leading to your entry into a mortal body known as man. You were there with God in the beginning, you were God. There was no evolutionary progression from a worm to a bird to a man. This narrative is a facet of the universal structure. When you descended to animate man, you were God, and only a son of God can undertake this descent. A defined number is necessary, and all God's sons are vital components forming the pluralistic essence of God, the term Elohim, representing humanity composed as a compound of others. No more exists in this world than sons of God. Every individual born of a woman is alive because a son of God, their ancestral essence, animates and tests them until they detach from that body, their David, their beloved. Just as someone confined in a dungeon, harboring feelings of abuse, can project an image of hatred and cause disturbances in the world. Though he remains entirely unknown, concealed in a dungeon and invisible to the world, his vivid imagination can exert such influence that many are ensnared in his imaginative constructs. We often find ourselves dispensing advice, even when the scriptures remain silent on the matter, whether it be good or bad counsel. The scriptures straightforwardly instruct us to share the good news that we are immortal, just as they are, and that we have crafted the world, subsequently disentangling ourselves from it. We are not advised to provide them with directives on what they should or should not do. If your son desires to grow a beard, allow him to do so. If he opts not to, let him be. Resist the urge to inundate him with well-intentioned advice. Instead, let him find peace in his unique way. Visualize emancipating yourself from such a state, recognizing that the world is yours, always reflecting your innermost thoughts. Viewing a situation as external can lead to entanglement in its shadows. Since everyone reacts to your imaginative acts, they are mere shadows. How can a shadow be causative in your world? The moment you attribute causative power to another, you relinquish the power rightfully belonging to you. Others are merely shadows bearing witness to the activities transpiring within you. The world serves as a perpetual mirror, reflecting your internal workings. If you comprehend this, you are positioned to enlighten your brothers, encouraging them, as all are interconnected. Go and convey to your brothers, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Ultimately, we are one marvelous being. The body is gradually being raised from the redeemed, and everyone will be redeemed. If a brother is lost in the realm of death, I will leave the 99 to search for him. Every individual must experience redemption, or a piece would be missing from the fabric of time. Hence, even those labeled as Stalins, the so-called monsters of the world, will undergo redemption, responding to the fears and dreadful thoughts set in motion by humanity. A friend shared an experience of rarely buying a newspaper but acquiring a Sunday paper a few weeks ago. In it, she encountered a story about a woman claiming to be a great medium, predicting California's collapse into the Pacific Ocean. The woman and her family were relocating to the east. Weeks later, the friend updated the story, discovering the woman, aged 29, had a heart attack and died shortly after arriving. From her perspective, California vanished. She now exists in a world much like this one, in a temporal setting more conducive to the work yet to be accomplished in realizing her true identity. This fearful individual met an early demise, but during her time here, she instilled fear in many. Friends of my nephew moved to Arizona, unknowingly carrying their beliefs and fears with them. You can traverse from one end of the earth to another, shape your destiny in heaven or hell, but you will remain conscious because God is omnipresent. Ceasing to be God is impossible. You might not be aware of it, but if fear dominates you here, it will persist in the afterlife. Like Job, the fears of this lady materialized. With fear, she fashioned her own catastrophe, yet in the end, it is asserted that it was God's doing. Only at the culmination of our journey do we grasp the true nature of God, moving beyond mere hearsay to experiential understanding. With fear, I once prayed to an external God, and all my fears materialized. So, upon recognizing the symbol that unveils my divine parentage, I declared, I have heard of you with the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes behold you. As God extricates himself from this extraordinary experience, his essence replicates. This mirrors the narrative of Job. Job committed no wrongdoing, he merely entertained misguided imaginations. He attributed blame to the devil, yet the devil exists not outside of man. Satan embodies doubt, he questions the reality of his imaginal creations. If you struggle to believe in the tangible reality of your unseen imaginative acts, you might turn to others for belief, but perpetual imagination persists because imagination is synonymous with God, and the act of imagining wields the power of the world. In the Genesis, you heard, but as your eyes witness the outcomes of your internal hearing, belief takes root. Ultimately, everything taken away from you will return manifold. Yesterday, the world commemorated resurrection, yet resurrection and being born from above are two facets of the same coin, transpiring on the same night. Earthly priesthoods designate this time as the first Sunday following the full moon in Aries, but such timing is not imperative. Resurrection can manifest at any juncture, it has occurred and continues to unfold as the temple is reconstructed on a grander scale. We are the living stones constituting the New Jerusalem. Trust me when I affirm that your extraordinary human imagination is Jesus Christ. Imagination traversed the threshold of death, your skull, and is now weaving the fabric of the world in which you exist. Imagination transforms into energy, and in that process, you, Jesus Christ, emerge. There was never another Christ, only one. When I awaken, I am He. When you awaken, you are He. And when all awaken, we collectively form the singular Lord God, the Creator of all things. Abstain from envy and condemnation, for condemnation is a verdict of your imagination. As you judge, so shall you be judged and fulfilled. You will inevitably encounter individuals eager to question your thoughts, choices, or actions. I am confident that, upon tracing our ancestry sufficiently, we would uncover a lineage featuring hippies, murderers, and thieves at the inception. No one is born a king, someone must assume that role and seize it. there is no need to revisit the past to alter anything or anyone, but refrain from harboring envy. If someone aspires to possess 1,000 acres, let them do so. If you desire to inhabit a beautiful apartment, affirm it. You may believe you lack the means for your desired possessions, but that belief is an imaginal act. I would recommend that instead of harboring the thought that you cannot afford it, mentally inhabit that apartment tonight, accepting the notion that you possess all the necessary funds to cover it. Persevere, and the world will respond. You will receive the financial means required to reside there. The world does not initiate, it merely responds to your imaginal acts. Only God acts, and God resides within you as your extraordinary human imagination. Now, before passing judgment, give it a try. If you do so, you cannot fail, and upon substantiating the power of imagination through the test, share this good news with your fellow beings. Inform everyone you encounter about how the world operates. You do not need a specific educational or social background to apply this principle, and failure is not an option. An assumption, even if initially false, becomes a reality when consistently maintained. Once you identify your desires, assume their fulfillment, believe in the truth of your assumption, and envision your mental world with the realization of your wishes. By doing so, you will be summoning a response to your thoughts, and in the not-too-distant future, you will find yourself physically experiencing the envisioned state. After achieving your desired outcome, refrain from returning to complacency and clutching onto the dream that has now solidified into reality. While attempting to materialize a desire through secular means, the cautionary tale of the rich fool comes to mind. He declared, "I have all I need, more than enough. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones to store my grain and my goods. Then I will say to myself, relax, eat, drink, be merry." However, the Lord responded, "Fool! This night your soul is required of you. Hold on to nothing external, grasp the power of your imagination. If something is taken from you, it's because at some point, you assumed its loss. Briefly, you wondered what you would do if it were gone. Although you might have forgotten the thought, your message had already been released to fulfill itself. If you wish to retain your possessions, maintain them in your imagination and refrain from constructing barns to shield them. Recall the narrative of birth in John. It doesn't recount the tale like Matthew or Luke but emphasizes that this birth is vital for entering the new age. So, right at the conclusion, it provides the beautiful symbolism of birth through death. It is only through death that one truly lives. A seed must fall into the ground and perish before being revived. Therefore, God undergoes death, proclaiming, "Unless I die, you cannot live, but if I die, I will rise again, and you with me." And indeed, God has risen. Now, let us enter into silence,